The ground shook as the sky burned. Ships roared over the trees, dropping fire and steel. Nate ran through the forest, breathing hard, branches cutting his face. Behind him, the sky cracked with more explosions. His unit was gone. The last thing he heard was screaming in his earpiece before it went silent. He had no idea where he was now. The map on his wrist was useless. The enemy had jammed all tech. His radio was dead. His rifle was low on charge. He didn't even know if the war was still going or if he was already the last one left. He stumbled through thick green undergrowth until he found a narrow cliff edge. The wind was cold here. He looked down and saw nothing but deep fog. No way down. No way across. Something moved behind him. Nate turned fast, raising his rifle. But nothing was there. Just tall trees and thick vines. He took a slow step back. His boots crunched a dry leaf. Another step and then he heard it again. A low growl. It came from the trees. He aimed into the shadows. "I'm not here to fight," he said out loud, though he didn't know who he was talking to. Maybe the trees. Maybe God. Maybe himself. The growl turned into a snarl. Then she stepped out. She was tall, muscular. Her eyes glowed gold in the shadows. She had fur on her shoulders, thick, white fur that hung like a cloak, but her face was smooth and sharp. Almost human, but not. Her ears were long pointed, twitching like an animal's. Her lips were red. Her nails were claws. And she was staring straight at him. Nate didn't move. She didn't either. They watched each other, both breathing slowly. His finger stayed near the trigger. Her hand rested near the knife on her waist. Then, without warning, she rushed him. He fired once. Missed. She tackled him hard. They rolled through the leaves. She was stronger than any human woman he'd ever met. Her claws scraped across his armor, leaving deep marks. He tried to push her off, but she slammed him down again. Her face was just inches from his. Her breath was hot, but she didn't kill him. She sniffed him. Slowly, her head tilted. Her glowing eyes narrowed, confused. Nate didn't speak. Didn't fight. He just looked up at her, waiting. She leaned back and stood up. He didn't understand. She stared at him a little longer, then turned and walked away into the trees. He stayed still for a long time, unsure if she'd come back to finish him. But the forest stayed quiet. That night, he built a small shelter between rocks. He didn't sleep. He held his rifle tight, expecting her to return, but she didn't single quotes until morning. The sun was low when he saw her again. She stepped from the trees, holding something in her arms. It looked like meat, cooked meat. She walked slowly, not like before. She came close enough to be dangerous, but didn't attack. She knelt and placed the food on a flat rock near him. Then she stepped back and watched. Nate stared at the meat. He was starving. His stomach was in pain, but he didn't move, not yet. Why? He whispered. She didn't answer. Just looked at him with those gold eyes. He slowly reached forward, picked up the food, and sniffed it. It was warm, fresh, real. He took a small bite, then another, and she smiled. It wasn't a wide smile. Just the corner of her lips turned up, but it was a smile. She sat down, a little distance away, still watching him eat. Her claws tapped the dirt softly. She didn't speak, didn't move. Just stayed there while he finished. When he was done, he looked at her again. "Thank you." She blinked, slowly. Then stood up and left without a word. That night, he slept. For the first time since the war began, he didn't dream of fire. The next morning, Nate woke with the sun on his face and a strange calm in his chest. He had slept through the night for the first time in days, and the forest around him was quiet. Still alive, still alone. But something had changed. He checked his surroundings, then stepped out of the shelter. The flat rock where she had left the food was still there, now cold and bare. He didn't know her name. Didn't know if she would come back. Maybe that one moment her feeding him was all there would be. A strange mercy from a strange alien. But then he saw the prints in the dirt. She had returned during the night, stepped close to the rock, watched him while he slept. He wasn't sure if he should be afraid or thankful. He spent most of the morning checking his gear, fixing the tear in his sleeve, and trying to stretch the last bit of power from his wristband. The map still didn't work. The signal was dead. He was still lost in this jungle-covered side of the alien world. Around midday, he saw her again. This time she didn't wait in the shadows. She walked straight toward him, slow, steady, and without fear. She had something wrapped in bark in her hands. Another meal? He didn't raise his weapon. She stopped just a few steps from him. Her golden eyes studied him for a long moment. Then she placed the bundle of food on the rock and took one step back. He looked at the bundle, then at her. "Why are you helping me?" She didn't speak, but then slowly she reached toward her chest, pulled a thin string of bone from under her fur cloak, and held it out. A necklace. Simple, tribal, rough. It had a small stone in the middle shaped like a claw. She placed it gently at his feet, then turned her back and walked into the trees again. Nate picked up the necklace and held it in his hand. The stone was warm, like it had been close to her skin. He didn't know the meaning, but it felt like more than a gift. Like a sign. He put it around his neck. Over the next 3 days, she kept returning, always silent, always alone. She brought him food, herbs for wounds, and even a water pouch made from folded leaves. They didn't speak, not with words. But sometimes she sat beside him, not close, just near. Sometimes they looked up at the stars together. Sometimes she watched him clean his weapon or sharpen his blade. She didn't seem afraid anymore. One evening, while he was lighting a small fire, he heard her rustle. But it wasn't her. It was something else. The beast was huge, thick-skinned, six-legged, with long curling tusks and dark red eyes. It burst from the trees, its roar shaking the ground. Nate jumped to his feet, raising his rifle. He fired twice. The shots barely slowed it. The creature charged. But then she appeared. She moved fast, almost invisible in the trees, leaping from a rock and slamming into the beast's neck with her claws. She roared louder than the monster, slicing across its face. The beast screamed. Blood sprayed across the grass. Nate watched, stunned, as she fought wild and powerful, driving the creature back step by step. Then the beast turned and fled into the woods, leaving blood and broken branches behind. She stood over the clearing, breathing hard, covered in sweat and blood. She looked at Nate. And then she collapsed. He ran to her side. She was still breathing, but barely. Her shoulder was slashed deep, her fur soaked red. Her arm was shaking. She tried to sit up but winced in pain. "Don't move," he said gently. Dropping to his knees beside her, she didn't understand the words, but she understood. His eyes. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her wound. Then he pulled her closer to the fire, trying to keep her warm. Her head rested against his chest. Her claws twitched, but she didn't push him away. That night, he didn't sleep. He stayed awake holding her, listening to her breath, protecting the one who had protected him. She was still weak the next morning. Her eyes barely opened, and her body trembled every time she tried to sit up. Nate kept her warm, placing rocks around the fire and wrapping her in every dry cloth he had. He cleaned her wound using water from the stream and soft leaves. She growled when he touched her shoulder, but it wasn't anger, it was pain. Still, she didn't push him away. Each time she flinched, he whispered, "It's okay. You're safe now." She didn't speak his words, but her breathing slowed. He kept the fire alive all day. The jungle felt colder now, like something was watching. Birds didn't sing. Even the wind moved slower. At sunset, she finally spoke. Single word. Her voice was low, rough, and foreign. It didn't sound like any language he knew. But she said it while looking into his eyes. He pointed to himself. Nate, she blinked slowly. He tapped his chest again. Nate, then he pointed. To her. She stared at him. Then, after a moment, she touched her own chest and said, Kareth. It was hard to say, like a growl mixed with breath. But it was her name. Nate smiled. Kareth. She closed her eyes and rested. That night, he built a better shelter. Using branches and stone, making a wall to block the wind. He checked his weapon. Only one charge left. No signal. Still no way to contact command. But he wasn't thinking about the war anymore. He was thinking about her, the way she fought to protect him, the way she kept feeding him, even when he was useless to her, the way she now trusted him enough to sleep. In his arms. By the second night, Kareth could walk again, slowly. She didn't speak, but she followed him when he searched for food. She sniffed the air, warned him when wild creatures passed nearby. She moved like a shadow, quiet, careful, deadly. She hunted a bird and handed it to him. He cooked it. She watched, curious as he used fire and metal. When he offered her a piece, she took it slowly, like she didn't understand at first. But after tasting it, she made a quiet sound, almost like a soft growl of approval. Then something changed in her eyes. She reached forward and touched his beard. He froze. Her claws gently moved along his chin, touching the rough hairs. Her face looked confused and curious. She tilted her head like she had discovered something strange. Nate smiled a little. What? Never seen facial hair before? She kept touching, then suddenly gave a low huff and sat beside him closer than ever before. That night, she slept against his side. He didn't move. He didn't even breathe too loud. Her warmth, her fur, her strange heartbeat beside his chest, it all felt too real. Too different. In the middle of the night, she woke. Him. Her hand touched his chest. Her face was tense. She pointed toward the trees. Something was wrong. He sat up fast and grabbed his rifle. Voices. Not alien. Human. He heard men talking in the distance, shouting. Weapons clanging. Soldiers. Kareth growled deep in her throat. Her body tensed. She looked ready to run or fight, but Nate grabbed her hand. No, he whispered. They're my people. She didn't understand. She pulled her hand away, took one step back, and crouched low behind a tree, hiding herself. Nate stood up and slowly stepped toward the sound. He called out, Hello? Anyone there? There was silence. Then a bright light flashed through the trees. Someone shouted, Freeze! Soldiers burst through the jungle, weapons raised. He held up his hands. I'm human. I'm with the 14th. What's left of it? They surrounded him. One man stepped forward, a captain. Where have you been? You're supposed to be dead. Nate pointed back. I survived with help. He looked behind him. Kareth was gone. The soldiers led Nate through the jungle, back toward the camp they had rebuilt after the attack. The walk felt long, even though it wasn't. His legs worked fine, but his mind stayed behind, still in the trees, still near the fire, still with her. Water and clean clothes. A medic checked his wounds. The captain asked questions. How did you survive? What did you eat? Were you hiding this whole time? Nate answered, but only part of the truth. He didn't mention single quotes reth. He didn't say a Beastwoman saved him. He didn't say she fought beside him. He didn't say she fed him or slept in his arms. He kept her secret. But every night, he stared at the trees, waiting to see her face again. She didn't come. On the 4th day, a soldier came back from patrol and said something strange. Saw movement near the cliffs. Looked like one of the enemy species. Tall, clawed, but she didn't attack. Nate stood up fast. Where? The Fae. Soldier blinked. Why? You planning on hunting it? No, Nate said quietly. I need to make sure it's not hunting us. He left the camp before sunrise the next morning. No one stopped him. He carried only a pistol, some food, and a small light. the forest felt cold again. Not from the air, but from something deeper. When he reached the old shelter, it was empty. Fire pit was covered in leaves. The stone where she used to place food was cracked and dirty. He searched for tracks, anything. Then he saw it. A mark on the tree, 3 lines, deep and sharp, made by her claws. A symbol. He stared at it, running his fingers over the grooves. She had come back. She had been watching. He turned around and found her standing there. Single quotes, RETH. Still tall, still strong, but different now. Her eyes were tired. Her fur cloak was darker, covered in dirt. She looked at him like she didn't know if she should be near him anymore. He took a step closer. Kareth. She growled low, soft, uncertain. He didn't reach for her. He just sat down on the ground and waited. After a long moment, she walked forward and sat too, a few feet away. Neither of them spoke, but the space between them felt heavy, full of all the words they couldn't say. He pulled the necklace from under his shirt and held it up. Her eyes softened. He said her name again, gently. Kareth, why did you leave? She looked at him, then looked away. He could see it in her eyes. She was scared. Not of him, but of his people. He spoke softly. They don't know you helped me. I didn't tell them. You're safe. She looked back at him slowly, as if searching his face for truth. Then, for the first time, she spoke his name. Nate. His chest tightened. Her voice was rough but real. She had remembered. She leaned closer, slowly, and placed something on the ground between them. It was half of a roasted root, wrapped in leaves. A meal. She had brought food again, like the first time. He picked it up with care and took a bite. They sat in silence, chewing quietly. Then she did something he didn't expect. She scooted closer, just a little, and leaned her head on his shoulder. Her claws brushed his arm. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just closed his eyes, feeling her breath against him. Whatever they were, whatever this was, it had survived the war, and for now, that was enough. The days passed quietly. Nate stayed near the old shelter with Kareth, away from the soldiers, away from the noise of war. She hunted for him. He cooked for her. They didn't speak much, but they didn't need to. Their silence was full, strong. Sometimes she rested her head on his chest at night. Sometimes she curled beside him like a guardian beast, her fur cloak wrapped around both of them. And sometimes, when the stars came out, she reached for his hand and held it gently with her claws. He wasn't sure what they were to each other, but he knew it was real. One evening, as they sat beside a small fire, Kareth looked at him and touched the scar on his cheek. He froze. She traced it softly, her golden eyes filled with something deeper than curiosity. Then she said a word, not her language, his. Safe. He stared at her. Did you? He asked slowly. She nodded. Safe. It was the only English word she knew, but she used it like it meant everything. And for him, it did. But peace didn't last. The next morning, he woke to smoke in the sky, bright trails from ships cutting through the clouds. New drop-pods. More soldiers. More weapons. Nate stood at the edge of the trees and watched them land far off, closer to the northern side of the forest. He felt something twist in his chest. Kareth joined him, eyes sharp. She could smell the danger. She growled low. They'll come here, Nate whispered. If they find you. She didn't speak. She already knew. That night, they packed what little they had. Kareth led him through the thickest part of the forest, deeper than he'd ever gone. The trees were taller here, the air colder. The wind carried sounds of old ruins and strange songs in the distance. Finally, they reached a stone cave covered in moss and bone totems. It was her den. She stepped inside first, checking every corner, then waved him in with a short nod. It was quiet, warm, safe. He sat on the floor, out of breath. Kareth crouched beside him, silent. But before either could rest, they heard the sound A sharp crack in the distance. Human voices. Too close. Nate stood fast. They found the trail. Kareth didn't hesitate. She grabbed her blade and pushed him toward the far wall. There was a narrow tunnel, a way out. No, Nate said. We stay together. But she shoved him harder. He looked into her eyes and saw it. She wasn't going to run. She was going to protect him. Don't, he whispered. She growled softly. Her hand touched his chest, then moved to his beard again. She stroked it once. Gently. Then she whispered it again. Safe. He clenched his fists, then pulled her close. I'm not leaving you. Outside, boots hit the ground. Voices echoed through the trees. Kareth growled like an animal. Her claws tightened around her blade. Nate stood beside her. He raised his weapon. Only one charge left, but he would use it. For her, even if it meant losing everything else. The shadows outside grew closer. And together they waited. Asterisk footsteps echoed. Outside the cave. Shadows moved between the trees. Soldiers, human voices. Orders being shouted. Guns ready. Nate and Kareth stood side by side in the darkness. The fire behind them had burned low. The air was cold and tense. Kareth's body was tight with instinct. Her claws were ready. Her fur cloak shifted with every breath. She didn't move like a scared creature. She moved like a protector. A beast prepared to die. Nate raised his rifle. One shot left. One life to spend. I'm with you, he whispered. She didn't speak, but her golden eyes said everything. Then light flooded the cave. Flashlights. Voices. There they are. A group of human soldiers entered with weapons aimed. One of them shouted, "Drop your weapon, step away from the alien." But Nate didn't move. He lowered his weapon slowly and stood in front of Kareth. She's not the enemy, he said calmly. She saved me. She fed me. She protected me. One soldier frowned. Are you under mind control? No, Nate said. I'm under something better. Respect. The men looked confused. The captain stepped forward. That thing is part of the species that killed our scouts last week. No, Nate replied. She's not. She's different. Kareth didn't growl. She didn't bare her teeth. She just stood behind him, tall and proud, her golden eyes watching every gun carefully. Nate took off the necklace she gave him, the one with the claw stone, and held it out. She gave this to me, not as a weapon, as a sign of peace. The captain didn't speak. Tension hung in the air like a blade. Finally, an older medic spoke up from the group. Sir, if she meant harm, he'd be dead already. Look at him. He's clean, no wounds. No chains. Another soldier added, and she hasn't moved to attack. Not once. The captain studied them both. Then lowered his rifle. Stand down, he ordered. One by one, the others lowered their guns. Nate let out a shaky breath. Kareth stepped beside him again, still silent. The soldiers didn't know what to do with her. She didn't belong to any side. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't a prisoner. She was something else now, something new. The captain finally spoke. We're pulling out in 3 days. Command wants everyone off this sector. Extraction's coming. Nate nodded slowly. She comes with me. The captain stared at him. You're serious? Yes, Nate said. Where I go, she goes. Kareth looked at him, her ears twitching. And for the first time in front of strangers, she smiled. 3 days later, the dropship lifted off. Soldiers packed in silence. No one said much. No one asked questions. Kareth sat beside Nate, dressed in her white bear fur, eyes still watching everything. Some soldiers kept their distance. Others nodded with quiet respect. As the ship broke through the clouds, Nate looked out the window, then turned to her. You're safe now, he said. She leaned closer, placing her hand on his and for the first time she answered clearly. Safe. With you.